Hello and welcome to the Safer Bits show, and I'm your host, Miko Bits. So today we have an exciting show for you, which is we're talking to the Bitcoin CPA, Kirk Phillips. So excited to have him on our show. Today's show is really going to focus on personal cybersecurity, particularly as related to things like Bitcoin, but obviously a much bigger topic. So recently we've seen things like the Twitter Bitcoin hack, right? So, just hundreds of really prominent accounts on Twitter taken over by hackers, and what did they do? They're asking for Bitcoins. So, it's really an amazing time. And so, of course, everyone who is involved in this space should really take care of their own personal cybersecurity. So that is why we're having this meeting. So, first of all, just want to welcome you. Hey, Kirk, good to see you.
Hi there. Thanks for having me on the show. Great to be here. I love talking about this stuff.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we love having you here. So, I guess first of all, tell us a bit about yourself and, introduce yourself and let us know, how you got interested in this.
Sure thing. Yeah, Kirk Phillips. I do have been using the handle the Bitcoin CPA for some time now. Thanks for introducing me that way. I go back as far as 2014 when a colleague asked me and said, "Hey, Kirk, do you know anything about Bitcoin? My husband and I want to invest $1,000 in a computer so we can mine some Bitcoin and make some money. Do you know
Cool.
anything about that?" And of course, I had heard the word, but that was about it. And that's what started me going down the proverbial Bitcoin rabbit hole that many Bitcoiners describe. And actually ended up spending about 2 years writing and researching a book called The Ultimate Bitcoin Business Guide. And that was actually my answer to her question was because I didn't have an answer.
That's
So
fantastic.
I wrote the book, and that was essentially my answer to her question.
That's
And
terrific.
so
Yeah.
that's what started me kind of down the whole Bitcoin and kind of cryptocurrency path at that point in time. And of course, I was already a CPA and was offering professional services as far as virtual accounting and virtual accounting outsourcing and things of that nature. Worked in public accounting, all that kind of stuff, private accounting. Basically just morphed over time into really a niche practice, servicing businesses and also individuals in the space. And it's just turned into even beyond that. But I've even written courses for the AICPA, Blockchain Fundamentals course. AICPA,
Fantastic.
largest trade group for CPAs in the world. Have actually written several courses for them. I've done multiple speeches and presentations and teaching CPAs and attorneys because we're required to have continuing education. I guess really the vision from writing the book was really to be uh, a translator between the two universes, that being like the CPA universe and the blockchain crypto universe. And so that's also kind of what it's morphed into. But just in having a desire and a knack and an interest and really just understanding things well and a desire to teach people about that, which is kind of what we're doing today.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, really appreciate it. And earlier we actually had on the MikoBits show the Patrick Larson, who's the founder and CEO of ZenLedger. So that is also a tax software for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. So I think but the topic of this show is different, which is what we really want to talk about on this show is really about things like personal cybersecurity. So to me, the thing that I think is really important, I want to make this show relatively friendly to beginners. So, if there's like maybe a top two things or things to do immediately, right? Like, for example, are there any things that you would recommend somebody do, even while they're listening to this show, right? Like, are there any things that people can take an action, and improve their cybersecurity?
Wow, that's a good one. Right during the show, nothing like taking action. I like
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
So yeah, I can think of I can think of two things
Yeah.
that are the main things that you would produce I'm going to say the biggest results, like
Yeah.
perhaps with the least amount of effort.
Yeah.
Um, and one of those is actually something that you can do that I think is the highest value return item that you can, especially since the cost of it is free.
Yeah.
So those two things are um, strategically using emails. I'll dive into that in a second, but
Wow.
also using a password manager. All right.
Great.
Now,
Great.
password manager, you can actually, as a single user, in some cases, there's many of those, by the way. So I'm not going to get into the different ones. There's many different ones, but oftentimes as a single user, you can have a free account. And if you want to use it for business, then obviously you have more users. You're going to pay for it that way. So you can actually have a free password manager tool that is robust as, or can be, have elements of it that are as robust as what a business might deploy.
Yep.
But just looking at it from the email, what I like to think of as email is it's it's really a golden thread that weaves through your entire digital identity.
Yeah.
So just think about like that sweater analogy, or whatever, or that nice shirt, the really nice shirt, and all of a sudden it gets snagged a little bit and little hair pops out, and if you go to pull it, more pulls out, and so on and so on. You want to, you actually just want to cut it with scissors so it actually doesn't keep
Yeah. Yeah.
pulling out. So that's kind of the metaphor for how your digital identity is tied together. And that can be, again, essentially with a single email, especially when you take somebody, for example, who has used the same email perhaps for the last 10 years. It could
So
be AOL
let's
account or whatever that is.
let's deconstruct each one of these in turn, right? Because I think
Sure.
you've pointed out two things that are really vital. Before we kind of jump into that, one thing I'd like to do also is just put a quick little plug in from my website, which is saferbits.org, which has a lot of really good tips about kind of things you can do to help yourself be secure. But like, if I were to have a number one list, especially if you have any involvement in Bitcoin or cryptographic assets, I would say my number one thing would be to, if you use something like Gmail, is you can actually go into the settings area, and what I want you to do is I want you to remove your phone number as a sort of password recovery mechanism, right? So what you want to do is go into Gmail settings. You do it right now. Like, I'm happy to have our show in the background on a different tab, and you're just listening to us, and I'm super happy to have you guys, because, we want you to stay safe, right? And just to give you a freebie there is anyone can pretty easily take over your phone number. And once they take over your phone number, they're going to use that to take over your email. So get the phone number out of your Gmail settings, and don't use a phone number for password recovery. That's an easy one. You can do it right now.
That's actually an excellent example of something that's very easy.
It's
You're
very
right.
easy. It's free. And, if you're going to do anything, especially if you're involved in any Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, do it now. That's, the other people that should be careful are people who are public figures, who are famous. Get the number out, because that's going to help you a lot. So coming back to your
Right.
two main things, I'd love to talk about password managers. And, one of the ones that I've been hearing quite a bit of buzz about lately is Bitwarden. So Bitwarden is open source software, and because of that, there's freeness. Obviously, I think there's a pro edition as well. But what's your take on password managers? And So first of all, for a beginner, what is a password manager? What does it do? And why would I want one?
Yeah. Right. So a password manager is essentially a place that allows you to, it's like a dashboard that allows you to store any and every account, if you wanted to, that you use to log in. Like we typically think of, we got bank websites, social media accounts, any type of account, any account that has a username and password, you can add into the password manager. And essentially, in theory, you just do like a kind of a right click. It auto fills in the username and password and then enters into the site. Now, it doesn't always work beautifully like that, because it all just depends on the site, and whether you can go in magically. Sometimes you got to right click autofill or right click paste. But nonetheless, essentially, it's a way to really be able to just increase your speed and effectiveness with using websites, while also increasing security at the same time.
Absolutely. So one of the things that it becomes, so we'd love to have you kind of use a password manager. I think one of the things that people do that's bad, and that password managers help to solve, is they use the same damn password across every single freaking website, right? So that really, really, really is bad. And I can tell you that you can actually buy user login credentials on what's called the dark web, right? And so hackers basically compromise the security of services, and then they download the entire database of the usernames and passwords, and then they sell them on this kind of place called the dark web. You can get this on saferbits.org, but there's actually a website called Have I Been Pwned, PWNED, and .com. And if you go there, you can actually type in any email address, and it'll actually look up on a database whether that email address has been compromised on the dark web, and whether your email password is being now sold by hackers, right? So,
Great tip. Great tip.
yeah. So so the mere existence of such a tool suggests, and that's email only. Like it's not just emails, right? It's your bank accounts. It's everything. Every single part of your digital life, could be being bought and sold on this network. So a good password manager will help you. It'll help you create these kind of gibberish passwords that are like 30 characters long or whatever, like just really, really strong passwords.
That's right. Exactly. You can make stealth. Yeah. Use the password generator feature
Absolutely,
to
right.
ultra stealth password.
And the other thing a good password generator can also do is it can scan the passwords that it stores, and it can actually look for duplicates. So it can be like, dude, you've got like 10 websites where you're using the same password, like let's work through that together. Like let's help you fix those,
right.
And obviously, like, it's, these things are always a kind of balance between the amount of time you want to spend, right? So if you have a website where you're like, I don't really care, that's just stupid, like that's fine. Like you just need to kind of create appropriate defenses.
That's exactly right. Yeah, not every website's the same, because some it's like, what's the risk here if somebody got into this? It would be like a loss of practically nothing. I can't, think of an example, but then you've got your financial websites on the other hand. Social media, what could be higher value, there's not a risk of loss of assets, but loss of reputation.
Oh yeah, like I've had a bunch of friends where hackers take over their social media, and the saddest thing happens then, because what happens is the hacker starts reaching out to all that person's friends with some sob story. It's like, oh, I'm trapped in like a foreign country, like please send me bitcoins or whatever, right? And
right.
the nicest friends that like love you the most are the ones that are the victimized, right? They're the ones that are sending Bitcoin to the hacker, right?
I've had that happen once before, and
oh,
I
really?
actually said, yeah, and I actually contacted the guy, and I said, he says they're at it again. He said it's like his stuff keeps getting resold, so like a new perpetrator had purchased whatever that his credentials happened to be in. So they were like sending text messages out because they were trying to see who was in the Bitcoin community. But the thing is I told eventually I just played with him a little bit, and I said, you know what? I said, you need to go study up some more, because I can just tell by your language that you don't know what you're talking about. It's funny. Like you can just tell that it wasn't a real. I just knew it wasn't him, and the way he was speaking, it wasn't. They didn't know about Bitcoin. They didn't understand it, because I could just tell from the language.
Yeah. That's really funny. Well, maybe they should like take some of your online classes or something.
That's right.
That's great. I mean, I guess it's mostly hilarious for CPAs, but it is a kind of a crazy thing. So I guess the thing that I want to kind of touch on before we move on to kind of email, your second tip around emails, is really like, do you have any specific password manager, products that you like? I mentioned Bitwarden. What else do you like?
Yes. Well, I'd like to investigate that one. Sounds interesting. But we actually started using LastPass, which is one of the more prominent ones, and that's from just a number of years ago. Probably 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, LastPass is an excellent product, and
and also have used 1Password, but again, there's many of those out there. But I do like LastPass, and It's something that you can scale from an enterprise of one to into 100 or hundreds, and have great policies and procedures. That's the best part about it. Again, an individual can use it or a business can use it, and you can onboard people easily. You can actually the best thing is you can actually offboard people even more easily, essentially with one click. Delete. Are you sure? Yes. They're done.
So here's
Access to
so here's
all.
a here's a big tip when you're using a password manager is uh, the most common way to secure a password manager is a password, right? And so here's the thing is don't use the password like don't use a really stupid password, or don't use the same password you've been using for 10 years to secure your password manager. And the rationale is like this: is the entire password manager contains all your passwords, right? And so if a hacker can penetrate your password manager, then you're much more screwed than if they could penetrate any other thing. So just a hot tip is like, how you secure your password manager actually matters. And what I would recommend is in that one case that you create a brand new password that's not being sold on the dark web for the past 10 years, and that you commit it to memory, right? That you don't,
That's right.
right? And that it let it be the strongest password that you can imagine. So what
Matter of
are,
fact,
yeah.
that's how LastPass derived its name. LastPass is the last password you'll ever have to
Oh,
remember.
that's brilliant. That's great. You
And
have any
it
tips? Any tips for us about like password generation and memorization or anything else like that?
Well, yeah, like the password generator feature is fantastic because again, you can pick like all four character types,
Yep.
special characters, numbers, uppercase, lowercase. You can pick if you want to do pronounceable. Again, there's reasons you would want to do that. Or like you said, maybe sometimes with certain sites, it's like actually I don't want it to be long. I want it to be actually your minimum of 8 characters because I just want it to work. And there's low risk, no risk here. So there's different reasons. It's not always about creating the longest possible, most stealth password. It's really what makes sense in the moment.
So I have a bit of a tip, right? Which is, so what you want to do is you want to generate something that's pretty random, right? So here's a tip, which is one idea could be that you could basically take a passage of like writing, right? Like you could take a passage, so pick some like the Bible, or pick some book, whatever you like, your favorite science fiction book, or whatever, and just find a part that you like, right? And then get a sentence, right? And then what you want to do is you basically want to start, like, the easiest one is just basically take the first letter of each word in a sentence, right? But then instead of just going with that, which kind of really reduces the amount of randomness, what you might want to do is kind of make some substitutions, and you want to substitute, like, maybe what you can do is you can substitute like a dollar sign for an S, or you can start substituting special characters
Mm-hmm.
in a pattern that only and then maybe somewhere in the middle you can just insert some random thing, right? So there are ways in which you can create these really long passwords that are fairly easy to remember, and like are also kind of really really complex to kind of either guess or
That's right.
understand.
That's right.
But the point being is that that's a case where you really want a clean, fresh, new password that only you know and have. So that's great for passwords. So
And some of
let's
what you're talking about there too is adding salt, right? So if
yeah.
you're talking about rearranging, what just the simplest form of salt is generate password, say it's a 32 character password, and then you could just add a dollar sign at the end or some other character. That one extra piece is salt.
Yeah, yeah, I
Developers
like
use that
that.
term. I borrow it for this.
No, that's terrific.
So
That's terrific. Well, good. So the next one that I wanted to touch is the second tip that you were talking about email. So I'd love to kind of get your perspective on tell us about email.
yeah, so like I said, the metaphor is like I call it the golden thread, right? The
Yep.
golden thread rule, which is managing your email like it's the most important thing. So it weaves your entire digital identity together, and it really became clear to me. Speaking of your prominent people who have gotten hacked. And when I studied the stories, it became really clear. I'd say partially reading between the lines is not like all the facts were there, but saying, you know what, this is the anatomy of the breakdown. This is the anatomy of the hack. This is how it happened. So again, like I'm saying, people who perhaps have used the same email for 10 years, it could just be it could even be a business email or a personal email. It doesn't matter. But what people typically do is they'll just use that same email over and over again
Yep.
for every single account that they have. Well, guess what? After after those few years, everybody knows what your email is.
Yes.
Everybody that's in your network knows that email because that's the one you communicated with, and you've simply handed them the key to the top lock because they know your email. They now know the username. Now they can just move on to the password. And because we know that somewhere like 40 to 50% of all passwords are still 1 2 3 4 5 6 and password one. My son actually came in. He busted into the office door a few hours ago and said, "Hey, Dad, did you know that for PIN codes, did you know that 40% of all PIN codes are 0000 1111 and 1234? That makes up 40% of all PIN codes." So it's
Wow.
the same thing with passwords.
He's
People
a hacker in training.
Yeah, that's right. So that's just one step back to the password manager because it allows you to not have to remember. That's the whole point. You don't want to remember the password always. And if you need to make it super stealthy, you can't really do that using stuff that you're just going to like type back in, 6 characters long. So anyway, with the email, everybody knows what that is. Here's the other problem. Everybody knows what it is. And if that's the thing you use for all your accounts, well, now you just go to Coinbase, put that username in there and then see whatever go to whatever method you can do to hack the password.
Yep.
So
Yep.
the
Yep.
the problem with sites is, and I don't have hard numbers on this, I'm just hypothesizing, but I believe it's more than 50%. I'm going to say 60 to 70% of all sites use credentials where the email that you register with is the username. Not all the ways. Sometimes you create an account where you register the email, but you create a different username. But that's the minority of cases. I think a majority of cases is where the email is the username.
Yep.
So how do you get around that? Well, you create stealth emails that are, so you have to bifurcate email that you create. And I'm not just saying one, you can create more than one, but it should be a minimum of two. You create one email that you only use for username purposes and login purposes, another email that's only for communication. So you have to bifurcate the username/communication, which is the two main reasons that you would use an email. Split those into two using two emails, and from obscurity and
Got it. Got
obfuscation,
it. Got
you
it.
basically are using an email that you never use for communication, and therefore the attack vector gets reduced down significantly.
Nice. Nice. I actually historically use one of my email accounts, kind of almost like a corporate communication or spam mail email account. But, based on your advice, I'm thinking about starting yet another one that's, not for kind of corporate communication spam, but really just for very specific accounts, right? For the most security
That's right.
required accounts, I can just change it to this email. As far as kind of email providers, one of the ones I'd love to give a shout out to that I do on the Safer Bits website is Protonmail. So, Protonmail is very popular. It's an encrypted email provider, so it's kind of extra secure. Do you have any thoughts about
Oh,
email
absolutely. A
providers?
huge fan of Protonmail. As a matter of fact, they just now have a Protonmail shop, and I'm like, oh man, I can't wait to order my Protonmail hoodie.
I
Like, let's get
like
that thing going.
that. I like
I love
that.
Protonmail.
Good.
So
Excellent.
one other critical thing about email is back to the same thing I said, which is that most sites use the email as the username. Guess what? When it comes to an email account, what is also the same? The email of your email account is also the username of the email account. So
Wow.
if it's Kirk Phillips at Gmail, well, if you know what the email is, you also can sort of hack that email, Kirk Phillips at Gmail, because that's
Yeah.
also so what does Proton Mail as an example allow you to do? When you first create the account with an email, that can be the alias that you leave. Again, back to your statement about the more important an account is, the more a risk gets involved, the more the more value is there. If there's whether it's reputation or assets or anything, the more important it is to, in some cases, actually dedicate an email just for that one particular account. So with Proton Mail, you can do aliases. So the email uh, or the username email that you log into Protonmail with, this is how we would do it. That's the one you never use for any other account, ever, ever, ever. The only username or the
So you
email
create an
or the login to
alias.
access Protonmail, you never use anywhere but to get into Protonmail. So the attack vector on that is reduced down to approaching zero. Then
Nice.
within Protonmail, you start to create aliases and you use those either for
Fantastic.
communication and then use other ones for
One of
usernames.
the awesome things about this is that these tools start to synergize, right? Like they synergize. Like I'll give you an example. Is you're talking about Protonmail and you're talking about something like LastPass or Bitwarden, your password manager, right? So the thing is what if you create an alias, right? So the more complicated the alias is, the harder it is for hackers to detect or find, right? But it's also harder for you to manage. But the thing that's really great about a password manager is the password manager will actually be like, oh, well, which account do you want to log in as? And it'll actually kind of like suggest it for you, right? So it's just a lot less to remember, and it gives you a lot more control, right? So there's a couple of things that I want to mention with regards to password managers. One of the things that's really interesting that I found out about recently is that most people actually use their browser as a password manager. And it turns out this is crazy and horrible. It turns out that
Mm-hmm.
the password manager of the browser is actually storing your passwords on a file on your PC that anyone can read. That's insane. I did not know that, but that's a fact, right? And I found out about it because someone wrote an article about how they were hacked and how dumb they were, right? And they were like, I was hacked and I'm dumb. And the reason why I'm dumb is
Right.
I had all this password stored in my browser, right? It was in this case it was Chrome, right? And all the hacker did was get the file, right? And as soon as they got the file, what they did is they basically recreated a Chrome browser and then just loaded that password file onto their Chrome. And now that's
Wow.
that's
Amazing.
that's you, right? Like you're now, in Estonia, like, logging into all your websites, right? So
Right.
so when we tell you to use a password manager, don't save passwords in the browser. Don't save them in like Chrome. Like just don't
That's an
do
excellent,
that.
excellent point. Yeah, it really needs to be the third party password manager, not
It's
that's a great
shocking
point.
that that's a thing.
Yeah.
I was deeply shocked because I assumed that the password manager would in the browser would even use basic encryption or would use something, but it's apparently it doesn't use anything. That's amazing. So yeah, so tell me a little bit about other tips and tricks, like any other things that would occur
Well,
to you.
yeah, well, one other thing too, again, you talked about mixing and matching and the synergy of different techniques
Yeah,
and tools. And
yeah,
so to carry on with that. Uh, so, we talk about the uh, generate password tool or function.
yeah,
So what you can do is you can also use that to create the prefix to your stealth email. So again, you know, SQTRZ25, whatever
yeah.
stealth
Just craziness.
email. So you generate password, click one, then sometimes you can just click advanced. Like, I don't like that one. Click, click, click till you find one you like. Right. And they're all just random, but for some reason you're like, okay, I just like that one. Then you
Yeah,
can, you
I'm
know,
I'm with you.
use that as a prefix for your email and to keep it as stealth as possible, even when you have a paid account with Protonmail, for the ones that you use for these stealth usernames, again, for your Coinbase or your exchange accounts, if we're talking about in that context,
Yeah, or even
okay,
bank accounts.
even bank accounts, you would keep it at Protonmail. So stealth prefix at Protonmail. And then there's no identifier, even if the account is set up at whatever.com, that's your domain, you don't have to choose, you're not forced into using that. If that's how the account's set up, you can choose an alias that defaults to Protonmail. And then again, another layer of obfuscation. You can't visibly tie it to any identity, right? Or an entity or an individual.
I
So you
like
can again
this. This
use
is
that
fun
password
stuff.
generator. Yeah. So it's good. Good
Yeah.
stuff.
Excellent. So I guess my question would be this, right? Which is, if you're a beginner, like, how do you get comfortable with this? Like, how, obviously it's it feels like it feels like a rabbit hole. It feels like there's a lot to do.
Yeah, well, there's resistance. It seems to me around the password manager. And again, like you said, with one of those points of resistance is, oh, wait a minute, you mean, but then I've just got that one password, and if somebody gets that password, then they've got all my. So that's kind of a point of resistance that I see people come up with. But really, when it comes down to it, having it in a spreadsheet or having your passwords in any other format, to me, it's never going to win the logical argument that that's safer or a better method than using a password manager. Now, with that said, what I would like to point out is that a password manager is not an end-all tool, not a be-all, end-all tool, especially from a cryptocurrency perspective.
Yeah.
As we talk about having physical backups of things, private keys, but in this case, it could be a password to your Protonmail, because if you lose those keys, you lose access to all of your communications that way, because that's how Proton. Now, that doesn't mean that's Gmail. I'm just talking about that's Protonmail. So password manager isn't necessarily an end all, but we have this one client, right? Going back like 5 or 6 years ago, man, we talked about this with them for, it was probably 2 years.
Yeah.
And they resisted and resisted. And so what I said is, all right, you know what? Let's continue on here. Okay. Sometimes you have to speak to the listening, right? Speak to the other person's listening.
Yes.
Of the world. And so I said, you know what? He liked to travel. I said, you did a calculation that based on the average number of logins per user per day over the course of a year, you actually waste 2 weeks of your life. I said, so wouldn't you could go on 2 weeks of vacation rather than fumbling with passwords.
Yeah,
So
I love that.
I think that finally clicked for him after 2 years. And the point is, after he finally said, all right, we're going to use this thing. Guess what? After he's deployed it, and within a few weeks, he's like, I can't believe I resisted using this LastPass password for 2 years. This is amazing.
Yeah, let me tell you what that inspires me of think about, which is I read a awesome book called Atomic Habits, and it's the book is about forming good habits, right? And the thing that's so amazing is that he's really just talking about creating these tiny little atomic habits that are like 1% better, right? I just want this thing to be 1% better, right? But he's very interested in things like automation, right? So the idea of a password manager is really kind of related to the idea of a habit, and it's related to creating a new habit, right? So creating a new habit is really, it's about taking tiny steps. So I'll tell you what I'd like you all to do is, if you're watching this program, right, just go to Bitwarden and just download it, and don't even start using it. Just download it. Just download it today. That's all I'm asking you to do is go to Bitwarden. You can search for it on Google or LastPass, whatever you want, and just download the thing. Because the thing that's so funny about Atomic Habits is that, like, one of this guy's clients lost 100 pounds of fat by deciding to go to the gym for 2 minutes a day, right? And the first part of his thing, he would go there and he would just sit there and he would like look around the room. He'd just look around, he'd see all these people working out, and he'd be like, okay, that was 2 minutes, and then he'd go home. And obviously he didn't do that forever, right? You don't lose 100 pounds by like watching people work out for 2 minutes. But like, to me, a lot of this has to do with doing a step that takes 2 minutes. And the thing I'd encourage you to do is just go to Bitwarden or LastPass right now and just download it. Don't even open it. Don't do anything. Just download it and install it into your browser, right? Like, that's it.
I love it.
Right? Because then it'll be there, and it'll be there it's waiting for you to like, turn it on. And
I love that. I love Atomic Habits. I'm not familiar with that, but
it's such a good book. You gotta check out this book, Atomic Habits. And
I'm a huge fan of building habits.
Yeah, and the reason why
I call it auto habits.
Yeah, the reason why I bring it up in this context is that, first of all, like, we want to make, like, we're talking about this mysterious world of cybersecurity, and it sounds complicated, right? But like, and it sounds like a headache, right? It's not like that at all. Like, it's really just it's a bit like brushing your teeth, or flossing even, right? Which is that it's something that you really do that's really good for yourself. That prevents cavities, it prevents bad things from happening to you later, right? And it's a way of giving a little nice, kind supportive, protective gesture to yourself. But the point I would make is that it's about, it has to also do with habits, right? So do you have bad habits or do you have good habits? And the thing about forming these habits is you just want to do a little bit. Every day you want to make things a little bit better, 1% better, right? And if you just keep working on it, you can get really, really, far. And obviously all of this has to do with securing your future, right? Because, more and more and more and more of the world is digital and online. And so it doesn't matter if you don't have any Bitcoins at all, like more and more and more of your private information, like your bank information, everything's going online. So, you should definitely check it out.
Yeah, I love it. That's a great message. Like I said, atomic habits, like automatic habits. It's like if you can just instill a habit, but where you don't, to the point where you don't have to think about it. So you use almost zero energy. You just do it through, like I say, it's automatic.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that.
I
Well,
love how you're talking about just download that, just take that one step. I mean, yeah, maybe the next step at some point is whether it's the following day or whatever, but in short order, just add one site to it. See what it's like. Forget about like, oh my God, I got 275 sites or whatever it is. I got 100 sites. Just
yeah,
add one site and just practice.
and by the way, don't get intimidated by like, oh, you need to protect your password manager with the world's strongest password. You can do that later, right? Like
That's
if you
right.
download the password manager and you set up your account, you can set it up with like a reasonably okay password, right? And then what you could do is maybe write on a sticky note. You could write down something like improve my last password and just stick it on your monitor or whatever, right? Because at some point you're going to want it to be strong. But the point is at the beginning there's nothing in it, right? So like
That's right.
there's nothing to
Yeah.
protect, so
Right.
don't worry about it,
And
right?
just use the email that you have. Don't get hung up on the whole email thing. Got to create a
Yeah,
new.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So don't go
Use the
crazy.
email you have. You can change that email later. Same as changing the password later.
Yeah, yeah. So just to kind of get my quick plug in, like with Safer Crypto or saferbits.org. SaferBits is a website that kind of informs you about all of these types of things and gets you kind of comfortable with the culture. And this show is really just about normalizing this culture and just kind of openly talking about best practices and kind of making it more friendly and more familiar and just an easier part of your day, right? So just kind of get these nice healthy habits and just start improving because lots of people get hacked these days and it's pretty unpleasant. So Kirk, any kind of final words of advice?
Well, just in I guess in the same vein of simplicity and so forth, Atomic Habits is taking that one step. I mean, it's just even around using Bitcoin and crypto and stuff like that. I mean, and password managers, all this stuff together. I mean, I think it's actually, it's somewhat easy in a sense. And it's like I don't have anything that I don't have any advantage over anyone else. It's just a matter of just I started on one day and out of pure curiosity and interest, which helps, by the way, to be very curious and interested in something.
Yep,
But
yep.
through curiosity and interest, you know, just creating exchange accounts and wallets and doing all these different things and using password managers, just experimenting. I don't have anything special that anybody else has. It's just a matter of I would do one thing and then I did the next step and then I did the next step and the next step. And next thing you know, when a series of years passes by, 6 or 7 years passes by and, you know,
Yeah,
you're
you become
experimenting.
an expert. Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
love that, right? Because, I like to think about the whole Bitcoin thing as being a bit like the birth of the internet, and if you remember the early days of that, the people that were kind of the most leadership and the most pioneering were really just folks that were willing to kind of play and experiment and kind of check stuff out. And pretty soon they become like the experts and they become savvy and they're teaching their friends and they're helping everyone, and that's it's great to kind of talk to you because I see you in that light as someone who's sort of a pillar of the community, someone who's educating people, helping people. So really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I love talking about this stuff and hope that people can extract many golden nuggets and take it and back and put it to use.
Absolutely. And just to also kind of put in a plug for you, like I have companies that have availed themselves of the services of Kirk Phillips, the Bitcoin CPA. If you do have a company or if you are personally involved in Bitcoin or any cryptographic asset, Kirk is actually quite an expert in handling things like taxation and handling things that, help you organize your holdings. So, I obviously also has a personal interest in cybersecurity. So, I think he'd be a great choice if you're kind of getting involved in this and you want to get help in that way. So, thanks for coming on our show.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Okay. Bye.